Dear friends, welcome to another episode in the fantastic military world. In this video, we'll discuss various alerts separately issued by Russia, China, and North Korea regarding the imminent Third World War. But to what extent are these alerts real? And how concerned should we be? This Sunday, March 17th, during his victory speech in his fifth presidential race, Vladimir Putin stated that if NATO troops were sent to Ukraine, as French President Emmanuel Macron hinted, the world would be just a step away from the Third World War. This marks the second time in less than a week that Putin has referenced a new global conflict. In North Korea, last week, dictator King Jong-un declared for the third time in 2024 that the world is very close to a major and terrible large-scale conflict. Also last week, Xi Jinping of China ordered its armed forces to prepare for a conflict that he said could be global and could begin very soon. But why are leaders making such grave threats of global conflicts? And to what extent should we, ordinary people, be concerned? When we analyze the main conflicts and tensions in the world, we conclude that they result from attempts to reverse the current world order, notably the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Contrary to Putin's claims, Russia did not invade Ukraine to combat neo-Nazism, prevent what he calls NATO expansionism, or protect descendants of Russians living in Ukrainian soil for generations. Its sole purpose with that invasion was to annex Ukrainian regions rich in industries and natural resources, and, in the process, inaugurate what it called a multipolar new world order centered on Russia and China, with countries like Brazil, Venezuela, Iran, Syria, and North Korea orbiting around. In the case of tensions between China and Taiwan, and between China and the various countries bordering the South China Sea, the motive is also the same, with the Chinese trying to impose their absolute power and control in what they see as their strategic backyard. Just as inconceivable for Russia is a Belarus and a Ukraine outside Moscow's sphere of influence, it is also inconceivable for China to have a Taiwan and a South China Sea not directly controlled by Beijing. The only way for Putin's multipolar new world order to begin taking its first steps, in Russia's case, is through the defeat of Ukraine and its total and complete assimilation, turning it into a mere Russian protectorate. And in China's case, it involves the annexation of Taiwan and complete military control of the entire South China Sea. Until these two conditions are met, Putin's so-called multipolar new world order is nothing but an empty promise. This is why we see Russia so committed to the brutal and terrible invasion of Ukraine, and China so determined to pressure and antagonize the Philippines, Vietnam, and the island of Taiwan. And of course, the creation of a new multipolar world order is of no interest to the current holders of power, represented by the United States and its main European partners, economic and military powers, who do not want to see Russia and China as centers of power in the other half of the world. Whenever there is a serious threat of changing the status quo in the global geopolitical context, there is always the risk of a major conflict. This was the case, for example, when Kaiser Wilhelm II's Germany began to industrialize and arm itself, dreaming of one day being stronger and more powerful than the gigantic Royal Navy. At that time, England was the metropolis of the largest, most extensive, and richest empire ever to arise on our planet. And of course, German plans did not please the English at all, with the French and Belgians, also major colonial powers at the time, also seeing Germany as a potential major competitor. The fear of seeing the status quo altered led to a frantic arms race in Europe in the early 20th century, with all that tension and all that armament exploding because of a small spark generated in a regional incident in distant Sarajevo, giving rise to the terrible First World War, which left a horrible toll of 40 million dead and wounded. What we are experiencing today in 2024 is, in a way, very similar to what was happening in the world in 1913 and 1914. On one side, we have major economic and military powers trying to establish themselves as centers of power in a new world order, and on the other side, we have the current holders of power fighting precisely to prevent this. And just as happened in the phase that preceded the First World War, now the world is also arming itself at a frantic pace. In response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Europe and the United States are building more and more military factories and multiplying their capacities for arms production several times over. And, just as happened in the First World War, all the current tension and all this gigantic amount of arms only need a spark to explode and turn into a new world conflict. So, yes, It is a real risk. And yes, we need to be very attentive to it. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe and activate the notification bell to not miss any news, criticisms, ideas, or suggestions. You can leave them in the comments.